Have you ever noticed that even in the midst of the noise of the world, the loudest noise that prevents you from finding peace comes from within? Stoicism, the ancient philosophy of great thinkers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, was not created for those who just want pretty words. It was forged in the fire of reality, for those who are tired of suffering in silence, for those who want to stop being hostage to the habits that sabotage their lives. And that is what this video is about. Imagine yourself as a Roman general, but now the battle is internal, you against your own impulses, addictions, and patterns that keep you trapped. The Stoic does not shy away from confrontation, he faces it head-on. But he does so in silence, away from the audience, without having to prove anything to anyone. The true warrior does not shout, he does not show off, he transforms himself in the dark when no one is looking, and it is in this silence that his revolution begins. Today, you will discover the 10 habits that destroy your peace and learn how to eliminate them one by one, without fanfare, without needing approval, without justifying each step. Don't think it's easy. It's for those who have the courage to look in the mirror and admit, I can do better. Every piece of advice here is a direct hit on what limits you, an invitation to give up once and for all the need to please, to control, to compare, to live for others. Stop being a spectator in your own life. If you are tired of living on autopilot, of carrying guilt that is not yours, of always putting yourself last, then stay with me to the end. Because with every minute of this video, you will feel the discomfort of someone being challenged to truly change. This is not self-help off the shelf, it's a fighting philosophy. And only those who watch to the end will get the most powerful advice, the one that can turn your life around. Eliminate the need to be right all the time. The need to be right all the time is a subtle trap that traps even the most intelligent minds. You may think that defending your point of view tooth and nail is a sign of strength, but in reality it's just your ego screaming, desperate not to be dismantled. Stoicism, a philosophy forged in the heat of life's challenges, teaches that true power lies not in winning arguments, but in mastering oneself. Great Stoics, like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, knew that the obsession with being right only feeds pride, closes doors to empathy, and turns every conversation into a battlefield. How many times have you lost sleep over an argument that went nowhere? How many relationships have you seen wither because someone couldn't compromise? This need is an invisible weight that steals your peace and prevents you from growing. The true Stoic engages in debate not to prove superiority, but to learn. They understand that humility is a core virtue, accepting that they may be wrong, that they do not know everything, that there is always room to listen and grow. Pride is a silent enemy to the Stoic. They prefer wise silence to quick reactions, attentive listening to the impulse to correct. When you let go of the obsession with being right, you begin to see people differently. The other person is no longer an adversary to be defeated, but a companion on the journey, someone with whom you can share experiences, learn, and grow together. Historical humility is not weakness, it is wisdom in action. Recognizing your limitations, accepting that the world does not revolve around you, and that no one possesses absolute truth. Stoicism teaches that true security lies not in winning debates, but in building a solid mind, capable of handling criticism, contradiction, and even the discomfort of not having the last word. The Stoic is not shaken by contradiction because he knows that his worth does not depend on the approval of others or on the feeling of always being right. They seek balance, speaking when necessary, but knowing when to remain silent when silence is more powerful. Instead of reacting impulsively, they reflect, take a deep breath, and choose their battles wisely. They do not waste energy trying to convince those who will not listen, nor do they wear themselves out, insisting on discussions that go nowhere. They understand that inner peace is worth more than any momentary victory. In a society where everyone wants to be right, Stoics stand out for their calm demeanor. They do not need to announce that they have changed. They do not need to justify every opinion, nor do they need to defend themselves against every criticism. His actions speak for themselves. If he used to interrupt, he now listens to the end. If he used to explain too much, he now responds calmly. If he used to have to prove something, now he just smiles and moves on. This change is quiet but powerful. The Stoic knows that by giving up the need to be right, he opens space for ease, healthier relationships, and true growth. He does not get lost in petty squabbles because he is clear about what really matters, building a virtuous life guided by reason and self-control. The secret of the Stoic is to choose peace of mind over the imaginary prize of winning an argument. It is not cowardice, but strength. It takes courage to admit that you have been reacting, not reflecting, that you have been protecting yourself, not speaking. This honesty with oneself is the first step toward freedom. The Stoic understands that not all truths need to be spoken harshly, that it is often better to be kind than to be precise. They practice detachment from the ego, learning not to identify with their opinions and not to cling to the need to convince others. They know that the more they try to win, the further they get from true wisdom. In the end, those who are at peace do not need to win, do not need to convince, they simply live. Stoics do not seek applause or recognition for their ideas, but rather the peace that comes from knowing that they are acting with integrity. They would rather lose an argument and win a friend, give in and maintain harmony, than emerge victorious and alone. This is the quiet revolution that no one sees, but that transforms everything from within. When you eliminate the need to be right all the time, you discover that true victory is living in balance with humility and serenity. And in that stillness, you will finally find the peace you have been searching for. Stop comparing yourself to others. Since ancient times, Stoic philosophers have recognized that comparison is a trap that robs everyone of peace. Social media did not exist then, but the desire to measure one's life by the standards of others was already a well-known poison. Stoicism, that practical and direct philosophy, teaches that each person is responsible for following his or her own path without getting lost looking sideways. When you compare yourself to others, you hand over control of your happiness to factors that will never be under your control. The success of others, the appearance of others, the happiness or failure of others, none of this is in your hands. Stoics understand that the only valid comparison is with yourself, with your progress, with your pursuit of virtue. Comparison comes from the desire to have what others have, to be what others are. But for Stoics, this desire is a trap because it focuses on external things. Money, fame, recognition, material possessions, all of these are called indifferent desires. They may be good, but they are not essential. What really matters, what no one can take away from you, is your virtue, your courage, your ability to act wisely in the face of challenges. When you look outside yourself and feel envy, you forget what really matters. You are telling yourself that you will only be happy if you achieve something that does not always depend on your efforts. And that is a sure way to frustration. Stoicism proposes a radical shift in focus. Instead of wasting energy wanting what is beyond your reach, use that energy to strengthen what is within you. Ask yourself, what can I do today to be better than I was yesterday? The healthy comparison is with your own progress, with your ability to overcome your own limitations. The Stoic is not swayed by the fleeting glamour of other people's lives. They know that everyone faces invisible struggles, that what appears to the world is only a small part of the story. The hidden suffering, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, The doubts, none of this appears in the perfect photographs you see around you. When the comparison hits, the Stoic stops and observes. They do not deny the feeling, but turn it into self-awareness. When they feel envy, they do not condemn themselves, but use this discomfort as a sign that something needs to be taken care of in themselves. Perhaps envy indicates a legitimate desire to grow, to achieve something new. Instead of feeding resentment, he turns envy into action, into a desire to improve, into a discipline to pursue what really matters. The Stoic understands that life is made up of cycles, that each has its own time, its own rhythm, its own difficulties. There is no delay or progress. There is your path, and only you can walk it. Another powerful lesson from the Stoics is the concept of ataraxia, the serenity of those who accept their own journey without getting lost in judgment. This does not mean being complacent or not seeking growth, but rather abandoning the fear of wanting to be what someone else is. The Stoic practices gratitude for what they already have, acknowledges their accomplishments, learns from their mistakes, and moves forward. They don't need an audience, applause, or external validation. True victory is internal. It's waking up every day, willing to be a little better, to act with more clarity, to live with more presence. Ultimately, comparison is a dangerous distraction that takes focus away from what really matters. Building a life of meaning, purpose, and authenticity. The Stoic does not get caught up in the noise of the world, does not get lost in the struggles of vanity, does not sabotage himself by trying to run a race that is not his. They flourish in their own way, in their own time, with their own roots. And it is in this quiet choice, away from the spotlight, that they find the peace so many seek. When you stop comparing yourself to others, you discover that true freedom lies in being true to yourself, and no one can take that away from you. Eliminate the habit of justifying everything. How often have you found yourself explaining yourself too much, trying to convince others that you're not a bad person, that you meant well, that you didn't mean to hurt anyone? It seems that for every choice you make, you have to present a certificate of permission to exist. The world makes you believe that you have to explain yourself all the time, as if every step you take depends on the validation of an invisible audience. But how long do you want to live like this, held hostage by the fear of displeasing others, of being misunderstood, of not being accepted? Stoicism, with its hard and liberating wisdom, shows you that true freedom begins when you understand that you can be misunderstood and still be at peace. The Stoics taught that actions speak louder than words. There is no point in wasting energy trying to convince those who are already determined not to understand you. Most people are so caught up in their own pain and judgments that even if you write a treatise on good intentions, they will still see what they want to see. Therefore, the wise historian does not wear himself out trying to justify every step. He acts with integrity, does what needs to be done, and lets his life speak for itself. Silence in this case is not omission. It is maturity. It is the courage to make changes without explaining every detail, to move forward without carrying the weight of others' approval. When you act with integrity, explanations become unnecessary. Your presence becomes the answer. Your attitude speaks louder than any speech. Think about how many times you have felt anxious just imagining what others would think of a decision you have made. The urge arises to send long messages, to justify every choice, to explain why you are not present, why you do not want to participate, why you disagree. But what if this time you just walked? What if you let your peace be explained to you? This is the courage that few have, to change without convincing anyone, to choose your own path without asking permission. Stoicism teaches that those who know themselves do not beg for understanding. Those who are steadfast within do not seek approval at every turn. Of course, there are times when a good conversation is necessary, but if you feel obligated to justify everything, your mood, your absence, your decision not to go, not to do, not to want, you may be living more for others than for yourself. You don't have to announce that you're changing. You don't have to convince anyone that you're a good person. You just have to do what needs to be done with love, respect, and above all, silence. The more you practice this silence, the more you realize that the people who really understand you don't need explanations. They feel, respect, and understand without you having to spell out every detail. And those who don't understand, that's okay. They don't have to understand. The Stoic knows that it is not possible to control other people's opinions, but he can control his own reaction. He can choose not to wear himself out trying to survive in the invisible court of other people's opinions. You can leave that court, close that hearing. Start living on your own axis, not the expectations of an invisible audience. This attitude is not coldness, it is wisdom. It is the understanding that life is too short to be wasted justifying every choice to those who will not listen. The Stoic protects his peace as a precious asset, knowing that only then can he truly live whole without having to fragment himself to fit the mold of others. Starting today, make this silent commitment. Act with integrity. Explain less. Live more. Those who truly matter will feel the difference, and in the end, your peace will be the greatest explanation of all. Stop seeking recognition. Imagine a gardener planting flowers in the desert, away from prying eyes, without expecting applause. He waters, prunes, and tends them, knowing that the value is in the act of cultivating, not in the admiration of others. The Stoics, such as Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, understood this deeply. The quest for recognition is a chain that binds us to the expectations of others, making us hostages to something we will never fully control. When you act in expectation of a thank you, a like, or a compliment, you are surrendering your peace to invisible hands. Stoicism does not condemn recognition, but it does warn. If it becomes a condition of your happiness, you are trading freedom for a golden cage. Stoic philosophy reminds us that anything beyond our control, including opinions, applause, or criticism, does not deserve to rule our lives. True power lies in acting for the sake of the action itself, not for what it can accomplish. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journals for himself, not to be read. He was not seeking posthumous fame, he was seeking clarity. Similarly, when you help someone create something or strive, do it as if you were planting a tree in a secret forest. The value is in the gesture, not in the audience. Recognition, when it comes, will be a consequence, never a goal. The Stoics practiced autarky, emotional self-sufficiency. This does not mean isolation, but independence from external validation. Imagine an artisan carving a statue to perfection, knowing it will be buried underground. He works for excellence, not for praise. In the same way, your life should be carved by inner values, honesty, courage, justice. When you do good simply because it is good, without expecting recognition, you are practicing Stoic virtue in its purest form. The need for applause is like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. The trap of recognition lies in confusing being with appearing. Many live like actors on a stage, adjusting their gestures and words to please the audience. The Stoics, however, teach that the only stage that matters is that of conscience. Epictetus, a slave turned master, said, "If you want to be admired, admire yourself. It's not about arrogance, it's about integrity." When you stop seeking the spotlight, you discover an inner light that never goes out, the light of consistency between what you think, say, and do. There is a powerful Stoic exercise called premeditatio malorum, mentally anticipating the worst-case scenario. What if no one recognizes your efforts? What if your work is ignored? The Stoic answer is simple: so what? If you have acted with integrity, the external outcome is irrelevant. Like a doctor treating a terminal patient, your obligation is to do your best, not to guarantee a cure. Life is full of unrecognized efforts, and that does not make them any less noble. Recognition is fleeting. Virtue is eternal. Liberation begins when you replace the question, "What will they think?" with "Am I acting according to my principles?" The Stoic does not deny the pleasure of being praised, but he does not seek it. He understands that other people's opinions will come and go, just as the wind blows, without asking for permission. His mission is to be like a rock in the sea, firm in his convictions, indifferent to the waves that crash against him. When you stop living to be seen, you discover something surprising: the peace of those who don't have to prove anything to anyone. The flower doesn't cry out to be noticed, it just blooms. And in the stillness of its bloom, you find true freedom. Eliminate the need for control. From an early age, we are taught to believe that if we plan every detail, if we anticipate every risk, we can avoid chaos and ensure safety. The illusion of control gives us a false sense of power over life, as if the unpredictable can be tamed. But the truth is that no matter how hard you try, life will not obey your commands. Stoicism, with its brutal clarity, invites us to face this reality head-on. You can do everything right, and things can still go wrong. The unexpected does not. Ask for permission. The need to control everything is one of the greatest sources of anxiety because it places an impossible burden on your shoulders. The Stoics developed the famous dichotomy of control, a simple but revolutionary idea. There are things you can control and things that will never be under your control. Your actions, your choices, your reactions, these are within your control. The rest, such as time, other people's opinions, other people's behavior, and fate, are beyond your control. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic masters, taught that true freedom comes when we accept this division. When you focus on what you can control, you free yourself from the frustration of trying to change what is beyond your power. If you try to control everything, you become a slave to circumstances, always tense, always frustrated, always reacting to what is out of your control. Anxiety grows precisely because you are trying to hold the reins of a wild horse called life. Stoicism does not teach passivity, it teaches active acceptance. Acceptance is not giving up. It is recognizing what is in your hands and acting with excellence within that limit. Imagine an archer. He can train, choose the best bow, aim accurately. But when he releases the arrow, he has no control over the wind, the target, or the final result. The Stoics' focus is on effort and intention, not on the outcome. If you have done your best, you can rest in peace regardless of what happens next. This attitude reduces anxiety, brings relief, and restores lost ease. Stoic practice also involves self-awareness. Knowing what emotions arise when things are out of your control is essential. The Stoic does not suppress feelings but observes, understands, and transforms unhealthy emotions into healthy responses. If you are angry because something did not go as planned, stop and ask yourself, was this really within my control? If it wasn't, let it go. If it was, learn and improve. This daily exercise builds resilience, the ability to adapt and not be shaken by every storm that passes. Another essential point is inner freedom. The Stoics believe that true freedom does not depend on external circumstances, but on your ability to choose how to respond. You may be stuck in chaotic traffic, but you can still choose to listen to the music you like, take a deep breath, and not let the irritation contaminate you. You may receive unfair criticism and choose not to defend yourself, but to reflect on what really matters. This freedom of choice is what separates those who live in inner conflict from those who find peace even in the midst of chaos. Ultimately, eliminating the need for control is an act of courage and wisdom. It's not about conformity, it's about trust. Trusting that you can handle whatever comes your way, that you can learn from every situation, that you don't have to rule the world to live in peace. The ocean is life, your rudder is your mind. When you let go of the control over what you cannot change and focus on what depends on you, you begin to breathe again, to live more easily, to dance with reality. Those who try to control everything lose themselves. Those who learn to let go find true Stoic peace. Eliminate the urge to comment on everything. We live in a world where everyone seems to have an opinion on everything, from politics to other people's habits, from personal decisions to global events. This impulse to comment, correct, and judge, often disguised as help or social awareness, is a trap that leads us away from inner peace. Stoicism, with its practical wisdom, invites us to ask, what is the real cost of this constant need to judge? Behind this habit is not a search for truth, but an ego hungry for validation, a fear of appearing irrelevant, or the illusion that we can control what is beyond our reach. The Stoics taught that serenity begins when we understand the difference between what we can change and what we must simply accept. Epictetus, one of the great masters, reminded us that other people's opinions, other people's choices, and even the mistakes we witness are beyond our control. If you feel the urge to express an opinion, you are wasting energy trying to control the inexorable. Silence in this case is not passivity. It is intelligence. It is choosing to keep your peace instead of engaging in battles that, deep down, do not contribute to your evolution or the collective good. The Stoic practice of pro-socie mindfulness of one's thoughts reveals that the impulse to speak out often comes from the ego's need to assert itself. In his journals, Marcus Aurelius reflected on the futility of seeking recognition through empty words. He asked, "What do I gain by correcting someone who has not asked for my opinion?" The Stoic answer is clear: nothing except a false sense of superiority. True wisdom lies in recognizing that not every observation needs to be voiced. Withholding judgment is not weakness, but strength, the strength of those who have nothing to prove to anyone. Stoic humility also plays a crucial role. Seneca warned that the arrogance of thinking we know more than others is a form of blindness. Every person has a history, contexts and motivations of which we are unaware. By rushing to judgment, we reduce the complexity of human life to dangerous simplifications. Stoics practice suspension of judgment. They observe, listen, reflect, but act only when necessary. They understand that silence is often the best contribution they can make, both to others and to themselves. Another important lesson is to focus on virtue rather than vanity. When you feel the urge to criticize someone on social media or to turn a casual conversation into a debate, ask yourself, is this consistent with my pursuit of justice, courage, or wisdom? Or am I simply feeding my pride? The Stoics do not condemn dialogue, but they do prioritize the intention behind the words. If the goal is to inflate the ego, it is better to remain silent. If the goal is to make a real contribution, speak sparingly and clearly. Stoic virtue is measured not by the number of opinions expressed, but by the quality of the actions they inspire. Finally, Stoicism invites us to redirect the energy spent on unnecessary opinions towards self-knowledge. Instead of judging others, examine your own mistakes. Instead of correcting the world, correct yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Realize how much time you gain when you don't engage in gossip or useless arguments. This time can be invested in reading, reflection, or concrete actions that truly impact your community." When you eliminate the urge to have an opinion about everything, you discover a larger inner space where peace does not depend on the approval of others, but on the integrity of who you choose to be. Eliminate resentment. Resentment is a silent poison that you carry in your heart without realizing how much it is eating away at you. On the outside, everything may seem fine, but a single thought or memory is enough to bring that old hurt back to the surface, trapping you in a past that should have been left behind. The Stoics saw resentment as one of the greatest obstacles to inner freedom. They knew that when you hold a grudge, you are not punishing those who have hurt you, you are punishing yourself. Resentment is a prison of one's own making, and the key to freedom lies in one of the most powerful and courageous acts there is: forgiveness. According to Stoic philosophy, what really hurts you is not what happened, but what you choose to carry with you after it's over. The external event, the betrayal, the injustice, the insult, all of that is out of your control. What is within your control is how you interpret and react to these situations. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, said that the best revenge is to be different from those who hurt you. Instead of wasting energy feeding anger, the Stoic chooses to use that strength to grow, to become someone stronger and wiser. They understand that resentment is a useless weight, a burden that only prolongs pain and prevents new joys from blossoming. In Stoicism, forgiveness does not mean forgetting what happened or pretending that nothing happened, nor is it absolving the other person or allowing the injustice to be repeated. Forgiveness is above all an act of personal liberation. It is a conscious decision that you will no longer allow this pain to define who you are or set your mood. The Stoics teach that true strength lies in taking control of your emotions, in not letting the actions of others dictate your state of mind. When you forgive, you are not doing the other person a favor, you are doing yourself a favor. You are making room for the peace, ease, and tranquility that can only be experienced by those who let go of the past. The process of letting go of resentment takes practice and self-awareness. It is not easy or quick, but it is possible. The first step is to acknowledge the pain, to look at it without fear, without trying to hide or deny it. The Stoics suggest that you observe your feelings as if you were watching a storm through a window. You are not the storm, you are just watching it pass by. This emotional distance allows you to see resentment for what it really is. A temporary emotion that becomes permanent only if you insist on feeding it. Over time, you learn to remember without reliving, to recognize what you have suffered without carrying that pain any longer. Empathy is also a powerful tool on the Stoic path to forgiveness. Trying to understand the limitations and motivations of those who hurt you does not mean justifying their mistakes, but accepting that we are all human, subject to flaws and mistakes. By practicing empathy, you begin to see beyond your own suffering and realize that holding a grudge does not protect you from new pain, it only prolongs the old. The Stoic understands that by letting go of resentment, they choose their own peace over the need for revenge or to prove a point. They choose to be free rather than right. Ultimately, letting go of resentment is a daily commitment to your own freedom. You will feel the urge to take back the weight, to feed the hurt, to revisit old pain. But gradually you realize that you can remember without suffering, you can forgive without forgetting, you can move forward without carrying the past on your back. Those who hurt you may never ask for forgiveness, but you can forgive yourself for carrying so much for so long. When you let go of that burden, the world fits back into your chest, and life can finally go on easily and fully. For the Stoic, forgiveness is the greatest demonstration of strength and self-control that anyone can achieve. Eliminate the fear of disappointing others. Living in constant fear of disappointing others is like carrying a backpack full of rocks that don't belong to you. Since ancient Greece, the Stoics have warned about the danger of putting the opinions of others ahead of your own integrity. Seneca, one of the great names of Stoicism, likened this need to please everyone to a disease of the soul, something that undermines inner peace and distances us from our truth. If you say yes just to avoid conflict, you are betraying yourself. You are prioritizing the comfort of others over your own well-being. Stoicism does not condemn kindness, but teaches us that true generosity exists only when it comes from a free will, not a disguised fear. Stoic philosophy reminds us that the only things we really control are our choices and attitudes. Other people's reactions, their expectations, their frustrations, all of these are beyond our control. Epictetus, a slave-turned-philosopher, taught that we suffer not from events, but from how we interpret them. If you live in fear of displeasing others, you interpret their needs as more important than your own. You give external opinions a power they do not deserve. The Stoic, on the other hand, practices autarky, the emotional self-sufficiency of those who know that their peace does not depend on the approval of others. In his diaries, Marcus Aurelius reflected on the importance of living in harmony with one's own nature. For him, trying to fit into molds that are not one's own is like forcing a tree to grow crooked. It goes against its nature and causes unnecessary suffering. When you prioritize the desires of others, you are distancing yourself from your own essence. Stoicism does not preach selfishness, but clarity. You cannot care for others unless you care for yourself first. Setting limits is not a lack of love. It is self-respect. It is understanding that just as a candle cannot light other places if it is extinguished, you cannot be useful to the world if you are exhausted. The practice of amor fati, loving your fate, also applies here. When you say no to something that doesn't serve you, you are accepting that some people will be disappointed, and that is part of life. The Stoic accepts this reality without resistance, knowing that he is not responsible for the happiness of others. They understand that disappointing someone in certain situations is not a moral failing, but a natural consequence of living authentically. True emotional maturity lies in enduring the discomfort of not pleasing everyone in exchange for the freedom to be who you are. Another crucial lesson is the distinction between virtue and vice. For the Stoics, virtue lies in acting with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Saying yes out of fear is a vice because it stems from emotional cowardice. Saying no with respect is a virtue because it requires the courage to respect one's limits. The Stoic does not seek to be loved by everyone, but to be worthy of their own respect. They prefer the solitude of those who are true to themselves to the false company of those who will accept them only if they diminish themselves. Finally, Stoicism invites us to practice the death of the ego. When you stop worrying about being seen as nice or generous, you discover immense freedom. You realize that the most admirable people are not those who please everyone, but those who act consistently, even in the face of criticism. The peace you seek is not in the approval of others, but in the peace of those who do not have to pretend, explain, or justify every choice they make. When you eliminate the fear of disappointing others, you finally become the master of your own life, and that is the greatest Stoic victory anyone can achieve. Eliminate guilt for being who you are. From childhood, we are pressured to fit into predefined models, be outgoing, productive, always available, eternally optimistic. Those who deviate from this pattern, whether because they are more introspective, sensitive, or questioning, end up carrying a silent guilt, as if there is something fundamentally wrong with their being. Stoicism, however, offers a radically different way. Instead of fighting against ourselves, it invites us to embrace our unique nature, understanding that true virtue lies not in pleasing others, but in living authentically. The Stoics did not preach perfection, but the courage to be whole, even when the world demands pieces of you. Stoic philosophy reminds us that the guilt of existing as we are stems from a confusion between virtue and social approval. For Stoics, virtue is not about following external rules, but cultivating wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control within one's own truth. While society applauds visible achievements, success, popularity, wealth, Stoicism celebrates invisible integrity, the ability to act according to your values even when no one sees you. If you blame yourself for not being like everyone else, you are trading your essence for a character, and that goes against the Stoic principle of living in harmony with your own nature. One of the pillars of Stoicism is the dichotomy of control, separating what depends on you from what is beyond your power. Your emotions, your choices, your values are in your hands. Other people's expectations, judgments, social norms, these are in the realm of the uncontrollable. Guilt for being who you are arises when you confuse these two worlds and waste energy trying to conform to criteria you did not choose. Epictetus, a slave turned Stoic master, taught, "If you want to be loved, be authentic. If you are not loved, for it know that authenticity is already self-love." The practice of self-knowledge is central. The Stoics encouraged daily introspection, not to criticize oneself, but to understand oneself. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journals not to punish himself, but to align himself with his own essence. When you observe yourself without judgment, you discover that many flaws are just misunderstood traits. Excessive sensitivity can be potential compassion. Introspection can hide depth of thought. Stoicism does not deny the need for growth, but insists that it must come from within, not from pressure to conform. Another crucial lesson is the acceptance of imperfection as part of the human condition. The Stoics understood that we make mistakes, not because we are flawed, but because we are human. Seneca said that life is a school where learning never ends, and authenticity lies in recognizing that we will always be learners. Beating yourself up for not being ideal is like criticizing a tree for not being a mountain. You lose sight of the unique beauty of what you already are. Stoic virtue does not require perfection. It requires a conscious effort to act with integrity within one's limitations. Eliminate the habit of living for others. Living to please others is like pruning a tree until it loses its natural shape. In the end, all that remains is a lifeless skeleton, far from its true essence. Stoicism, a philosophy that flourished in the adversity of emperors and slaves, teaches us that freedom lies not in being everything to everyone, but in being whole to oneself. While society applauds those who conform to the expectations of others, Stoics celebrate the courage of those who live by their principles, even if it means swimming against the current. True peace comes not from praise, but from the integrity of those who do not trade their souls for a little approval. The Stoics practice the dichotomy of control, separating what depends on us from what is beyond our power. Your choices, your values, your attitudes are in your hands. The opinions, expectations, and demands of others, they are in the realm of the uncontrollable. If you live to please, you waste energy trying to tame the unmanageable. Epictetus, a philosopher who was born a slave, taught, "If you wish to be free, never place your happiness in the hands of those who can take it away." Stoic freedom lies in acting with authenticity, regardless of who applauds or criticizes. The virtue of courage is essential. Saying no is not selfishness, it is self-respect. Stoics understand that setting boundaries does not hurt others. It protects oneself. Imagine a river. If it changes course every time a rock appears, it will never reach the sea. Similarly, if you change direction with every expectation of others, you will lose your way. Seneca warned, "No wind is favorable to those who do not know where they are going." Courage is staying the course, even when the voices around you insist that you are wrong. To live for others is to betray one's own nature. The Stoics believed that each person has a unique essence to be cultivated, like a seed that carries the potential of a particular tree. Trying to be like others is like forcing an oak tree to produce cherry blossoms against nature, frustrating and doomed to failure. Marcus Aurelius reflected in his journals, "What a relief it is to stop being a puppet of other people's opinions and to dance to the music of one's own soul." Life gains meaning when you stop playing roles and take center stage in your own story. Stoic integrity requires that your actions be guided by your values, not by fear of displeasing others. Being kind does not mean saying yes to everything. It means acting justly, even when it makes you uncomfortable. Imagine a doctor who prescribes bitter medicine. He does it not to be loved, but to heal. Similarly, when you prioritize your truth, you're taking care of your emotional health. Integrity is not about perfection, but about consistency, thinking, speaking, and acting in harmony without masks or empty talk. Ultimate liberation comes from amor fati, loving your own destiny, including the parts that others dislike. Accept that some people will walk away when you stop performing. Accept that being authentic may mean temporary loneliness. But as Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, taught, better to be alone with your truth than to be accompanied by lies. Or, when you eliminate the habit of living for others, you discover an inner space so vast that the outside world loses its power to define you. The peace that emerges is not the absence of conflict, but the certainty that no matter what happens, outside you remain steadfast in your center. We have reached the end of this journey, but the real transformation is just beginning. Now you know, you don't have to announce change or ask permission to be who you are. Stoicism has shown us that peace does not come from winning arguments, pleasing everyone, or living to be applauded. It is born in the silence of daily choices. When you stop carrying burdens that are not yours, let go of control over what you cannot change, and stop seeking approval at every turn. Each habit you choose to eliminate is a door that opens to a lighter, truer, more authentic life. You don't have to be perfect or fit into any mold. You can be sensitive, intense, reserved, curious. You can have good days and bad days. You can make mistakes and learn. The important thing is to act with integrity, to respect your limits, and not to give yourself away to fit into other people's dreams. Remember, those who live to please the world forget to please themselves. Those who have the courage to be whole may lose some applause, but they gain something no one can take away, the peace of being authentic. If you've made it this far, you've already taken the first step in this silent revolution. You don't have to tell anyone. You don't have to justify your new choices. Just live differently. Choose yourself every day, even if it is in silence. Let your actions speak for themselves. Little by little, the world around you will change because you have changed within. If this video made sense to you, if it touched something you needed to hear, leave a like, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content. Here, you will always find tools to build a stronger, lighter, and freer life. Remember, the real revolution begins in the stillness of your heart. Shall we walk this path together? See you in the next video.